Hello everyone, I am Sahana Prasad from Department of Commerce, Gopal Swami PU College, Mysore. Welcome to Accountancy class. In today's session, let's start with chapter 1, that is accounting for non-profit organization. Now let us see what is non-profit organization. Non-profit organization refers to those organizations which are formed to render social service and not to make any profit. So non-profit organization andre our main objective social service ಕೊಡೋದು ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಅವ್ರ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಲಾಭ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಅಲ್ಲ. For example, hospitals, schools, colleges, charitable trusts or institutions or any sports club, libraries. So these are the few examples of non-profit organization. Coming to the features of non-profit organization, they usually provide services to its members, and in non-profit organization their affairs it is usually managed by a managing committee. ಒಂದು ಕಮಿಟಿ ಅಂತ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಬ್ರು ಹೆಡ್ ಅಥವಾ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿ ಅಂತ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಥರ ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ಮೇನ್ ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಈ ನಾನ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರಿಪ್ಷನ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಡೊನೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸಪೋಸ್ ಇಫ್ ದೇ ರಿಸೀವ್ ಎನಿ ಗ್ರ್ಯಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆರ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಎನಿ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ದಿ ವೇರಿಯಸ್ ಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಫಾರ್ ನಾನ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ organization. Now let us see what are the various books of accounts maintained by non-profit organization. It usually prepares 3 books of accounts. One is cash book, second is ledger, and third is stock register. In cash book they record all cash receipts and cash payments, and in ledger they records all incomes, expenses, assets, etc. And in stock register they usually record all the fixed assets what they have in the organization. So these are the basic books of accounts which are maintained by non-profit organization. Now let us see what are the final accounts of non-profit organization. By preparing non-profit organization's final account, they prepare first is receipts and payments account. Second is income and expenditure account. Third one, they prepare balance sheet. So these are the 3 final accounts which are prepared by non-profit organization. First is receipts and payments account, second is income and expenditure account, and third one is balance sheet. While preparing final accounts, it is very important to know the meaning of capital items and revenue items. Under capital items you can see capital receipts and capital expenditure, and under revenue you can see revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Now let us know the meaning of each and every item. First one is capital receipts. So what are capital receipts? Capital receipts are non-recurring in nature. It comes rarely, and these capital receipts are usually huge in amount, and this capital receipts they are not received regularly. That is why they are non-recurring in nature. For example, you can see life membership fees or amount received on sale of fixed assets, special donations, all these comes under capital receipts, and you can usually find this in the balance sheet. So this is capital receipt. Next is revenue receipts. Revenue receipts. So these revenue receipts are recurring in nature. It is received regularly in the organization, and they are usually received regularly in the organization, and they are smaller in amount. So in capital receipts, the amount is huge, but in revenue receipts, the amount is small, and it usually appears in the profit or loss account or in income and expenditure account. And for examples, sale proceeds of goods and interest received on loan granted or interest on investment, rent received, commission received, all these are received regularly. So that is why we call this as revenue receipts, and it is recurring in nature. You can find it again and again. ಇದು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ರೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಮಿಷನ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಆಗಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ರೆವೆನ್ಯೂ ರೆಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಂಡಿಚರ್. ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ expenditure. So what is capital expenditure? Capital expenditure is an expenditure whose benefit is not exhausted in just 1 year, but the benefit is available for more than 1 year. For example, cost of fixed assets like land and building, machinery, furniture, all these are capital expenditure. ಇದರ ಬೆನಿಫಿಟ್ 1 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಂಡಿಚರ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಇವಾಗ ಫಿಕ್ಸ್ಡ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲಾನು 1 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬಾಳಿಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್, ಮೆಷಿನರಿ, ಫರ್ನಿಚರ್, ಸೊ ಆಲ್ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ expenditure. Now let us see what is revenue expenditure. Let us see what is revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure are those expenditure whose benefit is exhausted within a year. So it is incurred in a day-to-day running of a business. For example, salary paid, rent paid, printing charges. So all these you can find it in day-to-day expenses of the business. So that is revenue expenditure. So these are the 4 important classification of capital and revenue, which is very important for you to understand. If you understand this, you can do 12 marks problem easily. Next is deferred revenue expenditure. Deferred revenue expenditure means it's a heavy expenditure of revenue nature and its benefit extends to 2 or more years. ಇವಾಗ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಸ್ಪೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನು ಅದರದ್ದು ಬೆನಿಫಿಟ್ಟು 2 ವರ್ಷ ಅಥವಾ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಇಫ್ ದಿ ನಾನ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ on advertising, if they spend huge amount for advertising, or if they spend more amount on repairs of fixed assets or any old assets. And one more example I can give you is preliminary expenses. Preliminary expenses andre firm shuru madadakkinta munche ಏನು expenses ಇರುತ್ತೋ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು preliminary expenses ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. That is also considered as deferred revenue expenditure, and it is recorded in the income and expenditure account. Now let us see the meaning of some important items. First one is capital fund. So capital fund is the difference between assets and liabilities of non-profit organization. So capital fund consists of capitalized receipts such as legacies, life membership fees, entrance fees, donations for the current year, and also excess of income over expenditure. So we usually see this capital fund on the liability side of the balance sheet. Sometimes in the problem, capital fund will not be given. Sometimes you have to calculate. Now let us see how to calculate capital fund. So the opening balance of capital fund, you can find it in the opening balance of the balance sheet. So previous year balance sheet ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ opening balance of capital fund ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. So that you have to record it first. For that you have to add surplus. Surplus means excess of income over expenditure. If you have got deficit, that is excess of expenditure over income, you have to subtract. And you have to add all capitalized receipts like legacies, life membership, all capital receipts you have to add to capital fund, and then you get closing balance of capital fund. Now let us see the meaning of legacy. So legacies are the gifts or donations received by non-profit organizations under a will on the death of a donor, and they are non-recurring in nature and it is treated as capital receipts. Legacy andre yararu ಸತ್ತೋದ್ಮೇಲೆ will ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ದಾನ ಅಂತ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಲೆಗಸಿ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. It is not recurring in nature and it is usually treated as capital receipt. Next is endowment fund. Endowment fund is the money or property which is given by the way of gift by the donor. ಇವಾಗ ಯಾರು ಒಬ್ರು ಗಿಫ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಎಂಡೋಮೆಂಟ್ ಫಂಡ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಈ ಎಂಡೋಮೆಂಟ್ ಫಂಡ್ ಕೂಡ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾನ್ ರೆಕರಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ನೇಚರ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಇಸ್ honorarium. Honorarium is the payment to the person for the service given by him to the non-profit organization. ಇವಾಗ ಯಾರೋ ಒಬ್ರು ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಬಂದು ಏನಾದ್ರು ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ನಾನ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಏನು ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಆನರೇರಿಯಂ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Next is entrance fees. Entrance fees or the admission fees or the fees received from the members. ಇವಾಗ ಅದ್ರ ಒಂದು ಚಾರಿಟೇಬಲ್ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಕ್ಲಬ್ ಅಥವಾ ಲೈಬ್ರರಿ ಯಾವುದಕ್ಕಾದ್ರೂ ಮೆಂಬರ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಂಟ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಫೀಸ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಎಂಟ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಫೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಯು ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಕಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಅಡ್ಮಿಷನ್ ಫೀಸ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ fund. So if there is any fund given for a special purpose, that we call it as special fund, and it is usually shown on the liability side of the balance sheet, and all the expenditure connected to this special fund, it is usually deducted by the special fund. Next is donations. Donations are of two types. One is special donation and second is general donation. So what is special donation? Special donations are given for a specific purpose. For example, donation given for the construction of a building or for a construction of any swimming pool. So if a donation is given for a specific purpose or a special purpose, that we call it as special donations, and it is treated as capital receipts and it is recorded on the liability side of the balance sheet, and the special donations is always a huge amount. Next is general donation. See, in general donation, if the amount is big, we usually record it on the liability side of the balance sheet and it is considered as capital receipts, and if the amount is small, it is treated as revenue receipt and we record it in the income and expenditure account. Now let us see the difference between income and expenditure account and receipts and payments account. On the basis of nature, income and expenditure account is a summary of income and expenditure and it is just like profit and loss account. But in receipts and payments account, it is a summary of cash book. In receipts and payments account, you can find cash receipts and cash payment. Second difference is on the basis of nature of items. In income and expenditure account, we record income and expenditure of revenue in nature. Whereas in receipts and payments account, it records receipts and payments of both revenue as well as capital items. Next is on the basis of period, income and expenditure items, we record only the items which are related to current year. But in receipts and payments account, you can find the items related to previous year, current year and next year. And income and expenditure account, on the debit side, all expenses are recorded. And in receipts and payments account, on the debit side, only receipts are recorded. And in credit side, in income and expenditure account, income are recorded. And in receipts and payments account, on the credit side, payments are recorded. And in income and expenditure account, depreciation is also included, but in receipts and payment account, depreciation is not included. And regarding opening balance, in income and expenditure account, there is no opening balance, but in receipts and payment account, opening balance represent cash in hand or cash at bank at the beginning. Next is on the basis of closing balance. Closing balance represents either surplus or deficits in income and expenditure account, but in receipts and payments account, closing balance represent cash in hand or cash at bank at the end. So these are the major differences between income and expenditure account and receipts and payment account. Now let us see the format of receipts and payment account. Here you can see receipts are written on debit side and payments are recorded on credit side. See, ನಮಗೆ ಏನೇನೋ ಫರ್ಮ್ಗೆ ಏನೇನೋ ದುಡ್ಡು ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ ಏನೇನು ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತೀವಿ ಅದೆಲ್ಲನೂ ನಾವು ರೆಸೀಟ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಕಾಲಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀತೀವಿ. ಯೂಶಲಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ಫರ್ಮು ಏನೇನು ಪೇ ಮಾಡಿರುತ್ತೆ ಆಲ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡೆಡ್ ಆನ್ ದಿ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಇನ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಾಲಮ್. Now let us see one by one. Balance brought down, that is cash in hand and cash at bank are recorded. Subscription, donation, entrance fees, life membership fees, legacies, interest on deposits, interest on investment, dividend on investment, grant in aid. Suppose government has given any grant, that also we record here. Sale of investment, sale of fixed assets, sale of old newspaper, sale of old sports materials, locker rent, proceeds from charity show, miscellaneous receipts, receipts on account of specific purpose funds. All these are recorded on the debit side of receipts and payments account under receipts. Now let us see what we record on payment side. On payment, that is on credit side, bank overdraft brought down, that is opening balance of bank overdraft. Wages and salary, rent, rates and taxes, insurance, printing and stationery, postage and telephone, electricity charges, advertisements, entertainment expense, audit fees, honorarium, repairs and renewals, upkeep of ground, conveyance, newspapers, purchase of assets, purchase of investments, tournament expense, payment of certain funds, and we also find closing balance, that is cash in hand and cash at bank. So this is the format of receipts and payment account. You can expect 12 marks problem from this chapter. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಸತಿ ಓಪನಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಶೀಟು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ರೆಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಂಡಿಚರ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ balance sheet. Sometimes in the problem only receipts and payments account are given along with few adjustments. You have to prepare income and expenditure account and balance sheet. So now let us see what is the format of income and expenditure account. All expenditure are recorded on the debit side and all income are recorded on the credit side. ಅಂದರೆ ರೆಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟಲ್ಲಿ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಸೈಡಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದೆಲ್ಲನೂ ನಾವು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಂಡಿಚರ್ ಸೈಡಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಂಡಿಚರ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ರೆಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಕಾಲಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಆಫ್ ರೆಸೀಟ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲನೂ ನಾವು ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಸೈಡ್ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ಕಮ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಂಡಿಚರ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Like in expenditure, that is on the debit side, you can see wages and salary, rent, rate, insurance, printing, postage, telephone charges, electricity charges, advertisement, entertainment expenses, audit fees, honorarium, repairs, upkeep of ground, conveyance, subscriptions to newspaper, cost of medicine sold, loss on sale of asset, suppose ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇದ್ರೆ, depreciation of fixed assets, drama expense, sundry expense, all these are recorded on the debit side of income and expenses account. On the income side, that is on credit side, we record subscriptions, donation, entrance fees, interest on deposit, interest on investment, dividend on investment, grant in aid, profit on sale of assets, sale of old newspaper, sale of old sports material, locker rent received, proceeds from drama, sale of medicines, fees from patients, fees from school, miscellaneous receipts, all these are recorded on the credit side of income and expenditure account. So if we balance, suppose ivaga income ಜಾಸ್ತಿ expenditure ಇಂದ ಅಂದರೆ we get surplus, we record it on the debit side ಅಂದರೆ debit side balance ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Suppose if expenditure is more than income, we call it as deficit and we usually balance it on the credit side of income and expenditure account. So this is the format of income and expenditure account. Now let us see some of the treatment of items in the final accounts. First is capital fund. Capital fund is always considered as capital receipts and it comes under the heading capital and it is recorded on the liability side of the balance sheet. Second is subscription. Subscriptions which is received regularly, it is considered as revenue and we record it on the credit side of income and expenditure account. And next is life membership fees. Life membership fees are non-recurring nature and it comes under the heading capital and it is recorded on the liability side of the balance sheet and it is added to capital fund. Next is legacies. Legacies are non-recurring in nature and it comes under the heading capital, and we record it on the liability side of the balance sheet, and we have to add this to capital fund. Next is entrance fees or admission fees. Entrance fees or admission fees is usually revenue and it is recurring in nature, and we record it on the credit side of income and expenditure account. Next is special donation. Special donation is for a specific purpose and it comes under the heading capital, and we record it on the liability side of the balance sheet. Next is general donation. General donations, suppose if the amount is huge, it is non-recurring and it comes under the heading capital, and it is recorded on the liability side of the balance sheet, and we have to add it to the capital fund. Next is government grants. If it is for special purpose, it is considered as capital, and we have to record it on the asset side of balance sheet. And suppose government grants are given, general government grants, it is recurring in nature, and then you have to consider it as revenue, and we usually record it on the credit side of income and expenditure account. Next is endowment fund. Endowment fund is for special purpose, it is considered as capital, and it is recorded on the liability side of the balance sheet. And next is sale of old newspaper. Sale of old newspaper is recurring in nature and it is revenue, and you have to record it on credit side of income and expenditure account. Next is subscriptions to newspapers and periodicals. Its benefit is exhausted within a year and it is considered as revenue, and you have to record it on the debit side of income and expenditure account. Next is sale of old sports material. It is recurring in nature. Suppose if sports club idre old sports material na avaru sale ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, so that is recurring in nature. It is considered as revenue and you should record it on the credit side of income and expenditure account. Next is sale of old sports equipment. So, old sports equipment na ಅಷ್ಟು ಸುಲಭವಾಗಿ ಬೇಗ ಮಾರಲ್ಲ. So it is non-recurring in nature. It is considered as capital and you should write it on the asset side of the balance sheet, and you should deduct it from the sports equipment. Next is purchase of sports material and sports equipment. So it's usually its benefit is not exhausted within a year. So it is considered as capital and you should record it on the asset side of the balance sheet. Next is sale of fixed assets or investment that we usually not do regularly. It is non-recurring in nature and it is treated as capital. And here the asset side of the balance sheet, you should deduct from the concerned asset. ಯಾವ asset na sale ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ಅದರಿಂದ ನಾವು deduct ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. Suppose if there is any profit on sale of fixed assets or some investments, it should be credited to income and expenditure account, and loss on sale of fixed assets or investment, if there is any loss, you should write it on the debit side of income and expenditure account. Profit ಆದರೆ credit side, loss ಆದರೆ debit side of income and expenditure account. Next is payment of honorarium. Its benefit is exhausted within a year and it is considered as revenue, and you usually record it on the debit side of income and expenditure account. Next is expenses incurred on purchase of an asset. Suppose you have purchased any asset, so its benefit is not exhausted within a year. It is considered as capital and we usually write it in the asset side of the balance sheet, and you should add it to the concerned asset. So these are the treatment of items in the final accounts. So this table is very important because if you understand this classification, you can easily solve 12 marks problem. So in next session, let's start with 12 marks problem, and I hope you have understood today's session. Thank you.